Well, welcome to today's rant. And I have had an exceptionally rich morning, and I've been reading for about 5 or 6 hours. Not just reading anything, really good stuff. So we're going to test the theory today. Are we what we eat? And will this be a very rich rant? That is the question. But I usually read from 4 to sometimes 6 or 7 books at a time. I read a chapter here and try to ponder it, think about its, what it's saying. Do I agree with it? Do I disagree with it? Why do I agree with it? Why do I disagree with it? And just process it, and then I'll go to another subject. I kind of look at it like a full meal, several course meal, which if you've ever been to China, I think I was at one dinner that I think we had about 16 courses. I was shocked, and I didn't know it. I didn't speak Chinese, and my interpreter didn't tell me what was going on. So after the first 4 or 5 courses, I was already full, and I didn't know we were not even a quarter of the way through the meal. I had to sit there and keep eating. And anyway, it was great fun, great people. Love the Chinese. Love Chinese people. I love Asians. But there's a saying that the Lord really loves the Chinese, or he would not have made so many of them. And but they're such great people. Of course, I've never met a people group I didn't like. I did learn from and didn't come to really appreciate and respect. So I think, the Lord does too. He made everyone different. He so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. But I'm going to talk about a few issues today. And when I do that, almost every day I offend somebody. I really don't intend to. I never say things to purposely offend people. I say things to purposely challenge people. It's up to them to be offended or not. And sometimes I'm just honest, and sometimes clumsy, and sometimes, insensitive. I don't know how else to say it, but I'm not afraid of being insensitive. I'm not afraid of being accused of many things, because I'm being honest, because I'm sharing what I really think or feel. You may not like it, and it may not agree with it, and I appreciate that. I think it may not be the intent, but it is the result of political correctness to cut off all real, honest dialogue. And that causes even further divisions among people, ultimately. When you can't express yourself, you can't work things out if you can't express them for fear of hurting someone. I don't hire people that I feel like I've got to walk on eggshells around them. And if I find out a person turns out to be that way and I didn't foresee it, I try to move them as quick as I can, because it will spoil and ruin the whole organization. Gets everybody uptight. Nobody can do their job well. And I think political correctness is doing that to us in society. No, I think we need to be able to freely express what we feel, and that's what the freedom of speech was all about. That's what the First Amendment is all about. And freedom, the political correct police, the PC police, are trying to rob us of our First Amendment rights. And I think that was a God-given right. And even if it's not a legal right in the country you live, I think God expects it of his people. That's what prophets were. They were people who spoke the truth regardless of the consequences. So anyway, those who cannot bear the pain of real dialogue, I think are already dead. They're just automatons. They're not real people anymore. And that's what PC, political correctness, is doing to us. So I'm not going to be PC. Not trying to offend anybody, but not surprised that I do, and not that uptight about it. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm not being honest if I'm not offending some. So, anyway, I was reading a book of quotes. I love those compiled quotes. Some were good, some not so good. I'd say most in this book were not good, but it was worth it to read them for the few good ones. And, one of the first it says is from Aeneas Nin. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. I think that is a truth. It's not an absolute truth. I think there are people who can go beyond themselves and see things and see other people as they are, as the other people are, or the other things, but it's a rare gift these days. And I've shared before how I was so troubled, for a time, because people, it seemed like, would come up to me after every message I preached and would say things like, "Oh, I'm so glad you said so-and-so, such and such, because, it needs to be said." And I'm thinking, I didn't say that. I hope I didn't say that. I don't even believe that. And, I hope I didn't misstate things that terribly. And I go check the videos or whatever, find out, no, I hadn't misstated. They heard the opposite of what I was saying. They really thought I'd say it. And there's, I have things you can read all over the internet. Don't look me up on the internet, by the way. But people say all kinds of things that I've said and done and that I am. Totally, I don't even know who they're talking about. The person who they've projected me as would scare me too. But it's the way they heard me. It's the filter they had that turned my words. Now in Scripture, that's called the Leviathan spirit. It's a spirit that twists and distorts, and I think it is very prominent in humanity, very prominent in the world. It's why there's so much misunderstanding that we have between each other, the inability to hear. And I think that is one of the rarest gifts you find today. To me, when I find somebody that really listens when I speak, it's like a rare treasure. It's like I am immediately, you really want to spend time with that person. You feel like you can have real dialogue and real interchange of thoughts and all without being accused and have things distorted. Is such a rare thing. And but I think it is something we need to strive for. That's what the word understanding means. The word understanding came from the words to stand under somebody else's situation. So if we would learn to listen, where when somebody is talking to us, we're not just automatically playing through our mind how we're going to answer them, and therefore not listening to really what they're saying. You can't have a dialogue that way. But if we could really for a minute project and stand under that person, try to really understand what they're saying without distorting it through our filter. There are words that set some people off, and they take it really negative when it's not meant that way at all. I remember as a young preacher, a young pastor, when I said to our group, I said, God's called us to be a family, not just an organization. And I was shocked by several people coming up to me afterwards and says, "We're out of here. We're not going to be a part of this." I said, "What's the matter?" They said, "We don't want to be a family. We have not had one good experience in family life. It is a really negative." It was a wound to them. The word family offended them because of their wounding. So they had projected that our church was going to be something really bad because that was their filter for that word. You get what I'm saying? And we're doing that to each other constantly now. But then we have a serious issue of, I think, our education system and our media in general, I think, forms people that way. You know, television programming is called programming for a reason. I believe it's programming people to think a certain way, programming people to respond to certain words and terms as whoever's running the programs feels is appropriate, not necessarily the way it is or should be. But it's led to increasing misunderstanding, increasing division. As long as this PC stuff increases, as it has been, you can be sure the divisions among us will increase. Or we will lose our humanity. We will lose our ability to be able to be honest, to be transparent, to really communicate, to share what's on our heart. And you know, the PC police are trying to make everybody conform. Well, you can make it a parrot conform. You can make it say the right things and do the right things, but it'll never be in its heart. You remove those restraints, the real parrot will come back out. And that's what we're doing to people. You can't change people that way. You can change their behavior, but haven't changed them, the essence of who they are, one bit. In fact, you've probably made it much worse. Paul the Apostle wrote about that in Romans 7, and how the law, legalism, actually empowers sin and corruption. You know, legalism is not the answer to lawlessness. And we're trying to put people in all these legalistic straitjackets, especially the straitjackets of the mind, where we can no longer communicate, no longer be honest and transparent. Then we no longer have deep, meaningful, and real relationships. Well, I've tried to tell people in our church that church is not intended to be a safe space. That offended a lot of people. We lost a lot of people in that. I was honestly happy to see them go. Because they would have, we couldn't go where we're supposed to go with them there. Not until they're healed. We would try to heal them, but they don't want to be healed. They don't want to be healed of their open wounds. They want to be in a place where their wounds can't be touched. And you know, the priest in the Old Testament could not have wounds, could not have open wounds. They were disqualified from the priesthood for having wounds. And they had to be healed to remain a priest. The reason was, if you have open wounds, nobody can touch you. Nobody can get close to you. And to be a priest, people had to be able to touch you. You had to be able to get close to people. We have to be that way in the body of Christ, so we've got to get healed of our wounds. But with everybody walking around offended and wounded, we'll never be able to get close to each other that way. We'll never be able to resolve the wounds and heal the wounds. And so I want to go even deeper in transparency. Just for the sake of learning, and, you know, I don't care how many people I offend. I don't care how many friends defriend me or people I lose. That's just part of it. I feel like I'm not doing my job when that happens, and I think I have a good example of anyone who's speaking the truth is going to be speaking to fewer and fewer people at times. But, you know, here's a thought to leave you with today. Since the initial publication of the chart of electromagnetic spectrum, humans have learned that what we can touch, smell, see, and hear is less than 1/1,000,000th of reality. Think about that. You know that if you've seen the light spectrum, what we can see with our eyes is, I mean, you take a big circle of the light spectrum, what we can see is the tiniest little sliver. all the rest that is real light we cannot see with these eyes. And other animals can see parts that we can't see and everything. And I believe God created all light for a reason. But we tend to think the little sliver that we see is reality when the reality is the whole spectrum. So that's why I think Paul the Apostle encouraged us to open the eyes of our hearts, not just our physical eyes, but the eyes of our hearts. And I think we've got to do that, and I think to keep them open, you're going to have to understand people are not going to like you. They're going to be mad at you. People criticize every single thing Jesus taught. His critics jumped on him. Every miracle he did to help people got criticized. Read the New Testament. I could not find a single thing that Jesus said or did that some people didn't criticize him and accuse him for. And he was the truth. He is the truth. If it happened to him, it's going to happen to everyone who seeks to speak truth. So we just have to understand that's the territory we live in. That's what we're going to pay. And that's why I think he said, woe to you when all men speak well of you, for in such a way they used to speak of the false prophets. If you're getting along with everybody and everybody likes you, you're not speaking the truth. That's for sure. Certainly not being transparent and candid. You may be shrewd enough to say what people want to hear and say for every different group what that group wants to hear, but you're not speaking the truth. So let's embrace the challenges. Let's embrace that people aren't going to like us, that they're going to say all manner of evil against us, because Jesus said that about every one of his disciples, his followers. He said, this is the way it's going to be. If they hated me, they're going to hate you too. But let's esteem truth above popularity. It was said of Jesus, he emptied himself and became of no reputation. Here's the King of the universe, the creator of the universe, emptying himself and just not caring about his reputation, not doing anything for the sake of reputation. That's how he was able to walk in truth and speak the truth and be the truth. And the same is true for us. Thank you for listening to today's rant.